Hey guys, so today I'm going to talk to you about portfolio valuations, what that ends up looking like, and how it comes about that you grow over time. Um, there are two things that I want to talk about today, too. The first being that your portfolio is going to grow by spurts. And I've noticed this about my own portfolio. What ends up happening is that I'm sitting there and it doesn't seem to do much for a while, right? And then all of a sudden it just grows in this huge jump upward. And you might be going, oh, well, that's nice for you. But I gotta tell you, the reason why that happens is because you buy when it's painful, right? Your portfolio value is going to go up over time. And what you're going to do is you're going to be sitting there and you're going to be contributing cash and you're going to be contributing cash and you're going to be contributing cash to it over and over and over and over again, right? And then, and you're buying along the way as you're contributing this cash. And that's what's really growing your portfolio, right? And you're buying and you're buying and you're buying. But then you get in this downturn, right? Similar to this year. And what ends up happening is you enter this downturn and you're buying at the same time prices are falling. And so you end up just treading water. You get nowhere. And you get nowhere really, really fast, right? Like you're just sitting there treading water. Your account balance isn't going up. Fortunately, it's not going down, but that's only because you're contributing more money to it, right? And what ends up happening is you know those two effects, they just sort of cancel each other out, and you just sort of sit there and you tread water and you tread water and you're not doing anything and it's not going anywhere, but your share count is going up. The next thing that ends up happening is really important. The bear market comes to an end, right? And you enter a new bull cycle. And now, because your share count has grown so much, when the bull market takes off, it really takes off for you, right? Because you've been buying and buying and buying and buying. And that's what causes these spurts in growth over time, is that the portfolio is just growing in an almost natural way, right? Like your dollar cost averaging is paying off, and that's what causes those spurts, is because you are dollar cost averaging over time. And so what ends up happening is that you get stuck at certain levels, right? And I remember when I first started out a gazillion years ago, I was an 18-year-old kid at the time, didn't have a lot of disposable income, really, because I was paying for college and life was expensive and all of that good stuff, right? And I was only contributing a couple $100. And this was in the middle of the Great Recession, right, of 2008. That's when I really, really started to try to get things going. And what ended up happening is that I was just constantly, low on funds, and I just couldn't seem to get anything going, and I got stuck. I remember getting stuck and feeling like this investing thing wasn't working, but I just kept pumping money in, and I got stuck around $700 in my account. And it felt like I was never going to breach that $1,000 mark. Looking back, it was just like, man, you could have done it really a lot sooner, right? Um, but I started there and I was like, oh, $700. I can't seem to break past $700. It's just like, dude, that was not a whole lot of money. And it was pre a bunch of inflation, right? Like we've had 2% inflation since then. And that was 2008. And that was 12 years ago or 14 years ago. And I was stuck at $700. And I was like, dude, that wasn't a lot of money. That last $300, but you know, it felt like a lot of money at the time. And $300 is a lot of money for a lot of people. I don't want to sell that short, right? At the time, it felt like a lot of money to me. Now it doesn't, especially in terms of portfolio values, right? My portfolio jumps plus or minus several $1,000s per day. $300 doesn't seem like a whole lot anymore, right? But anyway, I got stuck at $700, and then I finally got over that hurdle, and I got to about $1,000 in my account, and then the account exploded, right? And I got to $7,000. And then I got stuck again, right? And I was like, ugh, so painful at $7,000. I can't seem to get to $10,000. And I got stuck, right? And then it jumps up. And then you get to $70,000. And it's like, ugh, I can't get to 100. This is hard. And then you get, you know, and you keep going and you keep going. And it seems to be right around that mark for me personally is where things always seem to get derailed and get stuck is the next 7, right? So at 700, 7,000, 70,000, and I'm not there yet, but 700,000 I'm expecting to be a real pain in the butt too. But that's sort of where I sort of get stuck, right? And I don't think that it's anything that it's happened enough times to me already that I don't think that it's anything that I'm doing, right? I think that it's just natural progression. And the more your share count grows during these times that you are stuck, the easier it becomes to get to that next level, to get to that next digit, to go from 3 figures to 4 figures to 5 figures to 6 to 7, right? Potentially 8, depending on where you're at, right? But that's the thing, right? Like you get stuck along the way. And it's not anything that you're doing. It's not that you suck. It's just the way that the market works. And almost to a certain extent, the way that math works, right? And that's the second thing that I wanted to talk about is how the math works here. Because it's kind of interesting. Everybody sort of says the first $1 million is the hardest. The first $100,000 is the hardest $100,000. And I believe that. Because there's a mathematical thing that's going on there. It's called Benford's Law. The truth of the matter is that according to Benford's Law, the basic logic goes something like this. Going from 100 to 200 requires a double, right? A 100% gain. Going from 200 to 300, though, only requires, you get this, it only requires a 50% gain, half as much, right? And then going from 300 to 400 only requires a 33% gain. And then going from 400 to 500 only requires a 25% gain, right? And it just keeps going like that, right? And it gets easier and easier and easier as you go along to get that next one. And so really, truly, there's a mathematical reason why that's true and why you end up getting stuck, right? It is part of that, right? You get stuck just ahead of that next that next figure, right? Tacking on an extra figure to your portfolio balance. It comes because of this mathematical relationship, right? And it becomes hard to get there. And then once you get past it, once you get over that hurdle, because before that, it requires more than a double in your portfolio balance. But as soon as you get past it, right? As soon as you get over that hump, all of a sudden, things get way, way easier. And you sort of coast down the hill till you get to the next big milestone. And that's why the first $100, the first $1,000, the first $10,000, the first $100,000, they're all very, very difficult, right? They feel difficult at the time, right? And then it becomes really, really easy. Like, I don't think about $1,000 anymore, right? Like, my account's going to go up and down by more than $1,000 in a single day, right? It's not hard to make $1,000 for me anymore because my portfolio balance has gotten to a point where it's just like, oh yeah, that's going to happen. It's inevitable, right? And it's going to happen no matter which stocks you're buying, whatever. And that brings me to point 2A, right? It's about contributing money. There's no way around it, right? The more money you contribute, the faster things go. Yeah. And that feeds into this doubling, tripling, right? You sort of have to force yourself over that hurdle, right? And it gets hard to do it, right? Getting up over that hurdle takes a while, right? It requires effort, energy. You have to put time, effort, energy into doing it in the first place. And part of the reason is that it requires more than a double, right? To get to that point. And you can't just coast your way through. And it's actually interesting. It's about the time that your daily gains is equal to how much you're forcing into the market I'd probably say on a monthly basis. When your daily gains get to about that point, that's when it starts to feel hard, because now the market can work against you, right? You can put in a couple $1,000 or a couple $100 or whatever happens to be the case, and you get to that point where you're putting a couple $100, a couple $1,000, whatever happens to be the case, right? And the market can wipe that, what you put in, away in a single day. I think that's where you get hard. And that's about at that seven figure that I was talking about, right? The $700, the $7,000, the $70,000, the $700,000, right? That's when it gets hard, because that's when you really need to push on it to get it up over that last hill, because the market can move against you and wipe out a month's worth of effort and energy and things that you've put into it in a single day, right? At least that's the story that I'm telling myself, right? And that's the hard part right there, is getting past that point where the market is wiping away what you're able to do through your own efforts in a month, in a single day. That's when it feels the hardest, right? Um, and so that's why it requires the effort, right? Um, but the thing is that the more you push through it, the greater your capacity will be in the future to make that happen, right? You will be able to increase things much more rapidly, right? So that's just sort of natural portfolio value growth, right? Um, it takes time, it takes effort, and you will get stuck along the way, and that's natural, and you shouldn't get discouraged by that. Okay, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Does that make sense with you? Does it resonate with you? What did I get right? What did I get wrong? Anyway, leave me a comment. That's all for now. Until next time, stay rational, my friends.